Welcome to my Traveling Colors studio. This is the third video in a three-part video series where I am demonstrating how I frame watercolors without glass. So for the first two videos, I demonstrated how to prepare paintings by adhering them to board and how to make your own watercolor panels that you can paint directly on. Then for this video, I'm going to show you how to varnish them, and I have three different methods I use, and then frame them. I will be using the three paintings that I prepared from video 1 to demonstrate the three methods. Now, each of the three methods, I still start with a spray varnish, okay? I use this Krylon UV Protective Archival Varnish, both in matte and gloss finishes. Before we start that though, there's a few tips that I want to let you know of things that I've learned. Okay, and first is, I suggest that when you try this, you do it on old paintings. That's what I did, okay? Get some old paintings, adhere it to board, and then you can try these different methods, okay? Now, the manufacturer suggests that you start with the gloss finish and then end with a matte finish. But I found if you only use the gloss finish, okay, it doesn't protect the watercolors completely. And you can bring it up with water and the paint comes up. So you can't just use the gloss. But if you use the matte varnish, it totally protects it. So I started out by doing 2 coats of matte and then 2 coats of gloss varnish. And that does work, but I will give you a warning, okay? Sometimes when I would start with a matte finish spray, I would get some ghosting, which is like a thin layer of dusty white that it was really noticeable in the dark areas, okay? Don't freak out like I freaked out, but you can reverse it by adding a couple coats of the gloss varnish on top, which seems to dissolve the particles that apparently had precipitated out, okay? So that works, but I also then starting with the gloss varnish and then going to the matte varnish. So either way works. For this video, we're going to do 2 coats of gloss followed by 2 coats of matte, okay? And that seems to help it not ghost. When you use these spray varnishes, you want to do it in a well-ventilated area or outside. Whenever I can, I do it outside. So let's go. First, you want to prepare an area with paper to catch excess spray. Then we are basically going to follow the directions on the can. Hold your can at a slight angle and at about 8 to 12 inches away from the painting. Using steady movements, spray horizontally and then vertically in order to get an even covering. Let each coat dry for at least 10 to 15 minutes before applying the next coat. I apply at least 4 coats. This will protect your watercolor painting from moisture and UV damage. Actually, the best way to protect your watercolor from fading is to use high-grade professional paints with good light fastness scores. If you want it to last, you've got to buy good paint. Okay, now we're back in the studio and we have finished spray varnishing our 3 watercolors. Okay, and we did 4 coats each, starting with 2 of the gloss varnish and then 2 of the matte varnish. Okay, now they're dry and ready. And let me just show you, these are now protected, and they're protected from moisture and UV damage. So let me just give you an example. If I put water on this painting, it beads up, it doesn't soak through. And you can take a towel and no paint comes up. So when I'm at an event, this is as much as I would do. At least 4 coats, if not more, and because I don't have much time in an event. So I would just stick this in a frame and we'd be done. So let's pretend that's what this one is. So that's my first method, okay? We'll set that aside. Another way that I like to finish a painting, because even though it's protected to this point, you have to now think about what type of finish do you want, okay? And this is where you need to experiment to find what you like. For me, my choice depends on the painting. Some paintings I like better with a matte finish. Some I like better with a gloss finish. And so it really depends on the painting. Here, I like to use cold wax medium. I use 2 different brands. Gamblin makes a great one, cold wax medium, or Dorland's wax. Either one, I haven't found that one's better than another. Okay, and for that, all you need is the wax and some paper towels. Okay, and you can do this inside, doesn't stink at all, it's great. All right, so for this painting, we're gonna do this brush on varnish. It again gives a different feel at the end. I like this Liquitex brand. It's a satin varnish, and it's acrylic based, so it doesn't stink. But now that it's sprayed with the spray varnish, you can brush this on and the paint won't run, and it works really good, and it gives a nice satin finished feel, kind of like an eggshell. So first, let's start with the wax. I'm going to use this Gamblin cold wax medium, and you're going to just use your fingers. You want to wash your hands, but I just like to use it because you can feel it better. So you're just going to take some of this. It's nice and soft. I love the look of this wax medium, but it is time intensive, so I usually only do it for small paintings. It works great, but it gives a nice lustrous feel, and I'm just going to start slapping it on. You want to kind of spread it as thin as you can. Now it'll look milky at this point, so you might be like, I don't know if I like the look. But what we're going to be doing is wiping off the excess wax, and then we're going to buff it. So it really ends up being a thin layer. Now I will end up doing a couple coats of this. I like at least 2. You can do as many as you want. The more coats you put on it, the more you buff it, the shinier it will get. All right, I'm feeling, so here right now, I'm just feeling all around to all the edges, making sure the wax, and you'll see it feels really slick and smooth. So it looks like I got it all. And we're gonna wipe off the excess, just taking a paper towel and wipe off as much of the excess wax as I can. All right, now you're gonna let that sit. Once you've wiped off the excess wax, I like to let that sit for at least 10 minutes, okay? And then we're gonna come back and buff it. It's been 10 minutes and I've let this painting sit, so I'm just gonna take another clean, dry, you can use a cloth or paper towels, I find are fine. And you're just gonna start buffing it. So doing it in small circles, and this is just going to give a nice even sheen on it. Gives it a lustrous feel and really protects against moisture. There's some issues with it, like I said. For big paintings, I don't really do this. It takes time, and I would want to do at least a couple coats, if not more. I should also mention, for the wax, you don't really have to put the spray varnish on first. You can just start putting it on and it will not bring up any of the watercolor. But I find that I just like to put the spray varnish on for all of them. And then I decide what the finish at the end is. All right, looks pretty good. So I would then do a second coat if I wanted that. But that's the wax method. Now let's look at what this brush on varnish is. Now, let me give you some tips before I get started. I'm using this Liquitex professional brand Satin varnish. It doesn't stick, and I'm just going to pour this on and then spread it around with a nice soft nylon brush. And you're going to want to try to get, I use at least 2 coats of this. And the reason I don't do this on the road is it takes at least 3 hours in between coats. Okay, so I usually only use this in the studio, and for a lot of my galleries, I love it. It gives a nice eggshell finish and it looks great. Also, you're going to want, we're doing it on paper because once the varnish dries, it becomes really, really hard. So I'm going to brush it on, and then I'm going to move it to a clean area to let it dry. You don't want to leave it because it will stick to the bottom of the paper, okay? So here we go, kind of shake it up. And you just pour it on. It'll look a little milky, at first, which is fine because you want to make sure you can see it. And then you just move it around to make sure it gets to all areas of the painting. And the best way to see that is to kind of look at it from the side. But I found one coat is usually not enough. I always seem to miss something, so I always do 2 coats. Do not do this without first doing the spray varnish, because this will bring up the watercolor if you have not fixed it beforehand. You can use this fixative too if you want. Again, the best thing to do is just try different methods and see what works best for you. Nice and even. And I kind of look at it from the side, like I said, to make sure I've got it all. Looks good. I've got some on the bottom, so I'm going to put this in on a clean area of the paper to let that dry. And you have to let that dry for at least 3 hours before you put a second coat on. So this just is a longer method, but again, another way to protect your watercolors. All right, and so when these are all done, I'll show you how I would just stick it in a frame and you're good. Now that we have all 3 paintings varnished, we're ready to frame. For the first one, we did 4 coats of spray varnish, starting with gloss and finishing with matte. For the second painting, we also did 4 coats of spray varnish, but then finished it with 2 coats of wax medium. Then for this third one, we did the same 4 coats of spray varnish, but finished it with a Liquitex brush-on varnish. Now you probably can't see it very well from the video, but each of these does have a little different finish on them. That's why I really encourage you to experiment on your own, decide what you like, because it really comes down to that. And I would love to hear from you. So if you come, or if you have different methods that you prefer, I would love to hear what you've got to say. So leave me a comment. So now that we have varnished these, the framing is really easy. And I'm going to show you that with this little painting here. This is how I would frame on the road. This is a plein air frame that I get from JFM Frames, and I will leave a link in the description to their website. And it's real simple. You just take the frame, take your varnished watercolor, and you're going to secure it with a point driver. This one being small is pretty simple. Then we just need to put a wire on it. I just stick a sticker on that's explaining my process, and we're done. As you can see, this framing without glass is pretty time intensive. Now it may save you money compared with the traditional framing, but it doesn't really save you much time. But it does change where you spend your time. So for example, when I'm on the road and at an event, then I do a lot of prep work in preparing panels that will fit into the exact frame size that I have. But then when I'm at the event, I just have to varnish it, which takes about 30 to 40 minutes. And I do as many as I can at once, and then I pop it in a frame. Easy as that. So I really like to do these at events. Also, the nice thing is that when you're at an event, you can see the stamp that they put on very easily. When I was using traditional framing, it was a little tricky. Doable, but this is much easier. Thank you for watching my video series on how I frame watercolors without glass. I hope it was helpful, and if it was, please like and subscribe to my channel. I wish you the best in experimenting and finding what works for you in framing your watercolors. I would love to hear how it goes, so please leave me a comment down below or through my website, briennemBrown.com. Also, For more tutorials and for full painting demonstrations, please visit openstudioonline.com. Until then, happy painting!